Welcome, everybody, to the Problematic Gaze. We are back, ready for 2026.
We are back, louder and prouder than ever, and even more problematic, I would say.
Well, yes, not us necessarily being problematic, but the elements we look at may be problematic. And we are opening the year. Well, first, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Liana, and this
is Dave Moore.
And each episode of this podcast, we take a piece of pop culture from yesteryear and ask ourselves the question, could you get away with it today? And if not, why not? And what does that say about society and culture then and now?
And alongside taking a deep dive into our chosen topic, we'll also put it into context by looking into the cultural events, the cultural world, the cultural landscape of the year in question. And that's it, really, of the year in question. That's the first time we've done that, isn't it, our new intro? I thought that went moderately well.
As well as could be expected, Dave. It will stick.
Work in progress.
It will stick, love. It will stick. Work in progress. Now, listen, we're opening the year with a big hitter, aren't we? We're pulling the big boys out for our first episode in 2026 because this episode we are looking at what many people regard as a classic, iconic movie from 1987, which is
Dirty Dancing.
And it's absolute filth, isn't it?
Absolute filth. And before we start, I should say, we don't want a repeat of past episodes like Pretty Woman or Love Actually, where it's beloved in many people's hearts and we completely slated. But I'm sensing that isn't going to happen this time. Loads to talk about Dirty Dancing. Phenomenon at the time, wasn't it? Which we'll go into as well. So if you love Dirty Dancing, it's one of your favourite films. Don't worry. I don't feel as though this is going to be a complete slating of a film.
It's not at all. And I have to apologize in advance. You may have noticed I'm sounding a little bit huskier and a little bit croakier than normal. It's not because I've been smoking 60 gold bars before it came on. I've had a terrible cold this week, Dave. It's been terrible. It's floored me, absolutely floored me, and left me with this hocking tuberculotic cough, which is just like bringing up oil every single time. So forgive me in advance, dear listeners. Possibly too much information. If you're having your breakfast.
Gazers, if you could have only heard what was happening in our little preamble, our little pre-episode meeting, all I can say is that I'm glad we're filming remotely today, that you're in PG Towers and I'm up in PG Manor, because if you were sat next to me, well, I'd have to put one of them COVID screens up between us, because Typhoid Annie over there, honestly, I'd never seen anything like it. It was like something out of The Exorcist. Feel the germs flying through the ether.
Yes, it has been quite particularly unpleasant. So I'm coming out the end of it. Couldn't have done this 2 days ago. So apologies in advance if I start hacking up. Don't make me laugh, Dave, because that's the guaranteed thing that's going to make me cough up a lung. So before we go on, what's your relationship with Dirty Dancing?
I remember when it first came out, just all the girls at school just playing the soundtrack and talking about Dirty Dancing. Have you seen Dirty Dancing yet? La, 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 la. It wasn't really on my radar at that time, but I just remember all the girls at school just absolutely swooning over it. It was a huge phenomenon back in 1987, but I must admit, I didn't see it till a few years later. And actually, I watch it now. If it's on, it's something I might keep on for a little bit. It's not my go-to, but I have seen it quite a few times. What about you?
I was obsessed with it a bit when it came out. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I remember in the News of the World Sunday magazine, they'd had like about 6 months before talking about the film that was coming to the UK. Again, shows you how long we had to wait for films in the UK. They said it basically saying it's absolute filth. And so, of course, this is the prime age of me masturbating over underwear pages in catalogues. So this film looked amazing. My nana, God bless her, very quickly got her hands on a pirate copy from the club. And she was obsessed with it. It was her favourite movie. And she watched it again and again and again and again and again. And I watched it a couple of times back then, loved it, loved everything about it. I'd never seen it since. And given our history of looking at films like this, I was a bit trepidatious about approaching it, but actually the power of nostalgia. I was swept away, top line. But because I was ill when I was watching it, I did have my heart removed in 1989, but I got totally caught up in this. I was sobbing, crying, snotting everywhere. It was really proper full on Linda Blair. But we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Leaking is what you text me. I said that you could have Patrick Swayze. It doesn't really do it for me. But you were sopping, weren't you? I told you to put a little mat down.
Honestly.
Because you'll never get those stains out that sofa.
That sofa, the things it seemed were making all stick, I tell you. Would you like to tell us a bit about the film, Dave, before we get stuck in? Don't make me laugh.
I will. Okay, I won't make you laugh. But, okay, so Dirty Dancing, it's a 1987 American romantic drama dance film written by Eleanor Bergstein, produced by Linda Gottlieb, so two women wrote it, produced it, and directed by a gay, Emil Ardolino. And I think it's just got that stamp all over it. That's all I'll say at this moment. Obviously, it stars Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey. The film was based on screenwriter Bergstein's own childhood. She wrote a screenplay for the Michael Douglas 1980 film, It's My Turn, but she ultimately ended up conceiving the story for a film which became Dirty Dancing. She finished the script in 1985, but management changes at MGM Studios put the film into development hell. I mean, that's a phrase we hear a lot, isn't it? Development hell. But then the production company was changed to Vestron Pictures, and filming took place in Lake Lure in North Carolina and Mountain Lake, Virginia, with the film score composed by John Morris and the dance choreography by Kenny Ortega, who we'll talk a little bit about later because he's quite an interesting character. So Dirty Dancing premiered at the Cannes Film Festival on May the 12th, 1987, and was released on August the 21st in the United States, earning over $214 million worldwide. It earned positive reviews from critics who particularly praised the performances of Grey and Swayze and its soundtrack. So that's the bare bones of the story behind Dirty Dancing.
Should I tell you what happens in the plot if you've been living under the rock for the last 40 years?
Go on, do it.
Francis, baby Houseman, goes on a respectable family holiday to Kellerman's Resort, which is basically an American Butlins, but very Aryan, and immediately wanders into an underground world of illicit dancing, class resentment, and a man called Johnny who looks like he came out of the womb brooding. Armed with little more than good intentions and terrible rhythm, Baby decides the correct response to the unfair treatment of staff that she witnesses is to learn how to dance via a sweaty montage and stare intensely at Johnny until he softens. There are awkward fathers, rich people behaving badly, and a medical subplot that makes modern viewers quietly gasp. But everything is ultimately solved at the end of season talent show. Baby delivers a speech she definitely rehearsed in her head. Johnny does the lift that launched 1,000 wedding discos, and the entire room agrees that social injustice, generational conflict, and personal growth can all be fixed if you dance hard enough. And nobody puts Baby in a corner.
Don't put Baby in the corner.
Don't put Baby in the corner. That was my Nana's favourite bit. She'd wait there and then she'd say along with him with a flag on the go. She'd go, don't put Baby in the corner. She loved it. Oh my God, she absolutely loved it. So can we talk about what Dirty Dancing is often remembered as something of a feminist romance? And I agree there are elements certainly, which are very progressive actually in this film. It's definitely kind of coming of age story. It's a film about having autonomy over your body and actually in Penny's storyline, what happens when you don't have that autonomy. But it really struck me watching it with problematic eyes is that actually it's very much a film about class.
Yes, very much so.
The rigidity of the class structure and how radical ideas are okay, but I get the sense that in this movie they're all temporary. I wondered what happened when this film finished. Well, that'll be quite interesting if we talk about at the end. What do you think happened after the credits rolled? Johnny was like, fuck yes, I'm off, baby. It's like, who are you, sorry? And off she goes to Yale and Harvard. It is a rebellious film. If the rebellion doesn't last, we shall ponder these thoughts in a wee while, David, I'm sure.
Before we go any further, shall we delve into Culture Corner to see what life was like in the UK and around the world in 1987?
Let's do it. Are we going to cross the Culture Corner? Are we going to delve into Culture Corner? It's important, listeners.
We could dip our toe.
We'll dip our toe into Culture Corner.
Yes.
I want to start the jingle, I'll join in.
Well, I don't know how that's going to work over the airways, but we'll give it a go. There might be a bit of an echo.
Okay.
Culture Corner, Culture Corner, Culture Corner.
Culture Corner, Culture Corner, Culture Corner. I think that was quite nice. Like we overlapped each other.
I know.
We might need to work on that.
This is independent podcasting in real time here, gazers. This is what we won an award for, which we won't talk about now. We'll park that. That was so last year.
Yes, of course. We won't ever mention it again. Never again. Now, listen, this is a film filled with music. In 1987, Stock Aitken and Waterman are everywhere, aren't they? They're at their peak. Kylie's been out. 1987, I Should Be So Lucky. Rick Astley has had his number one with Never Gonna Give You Up. It seemed, I remember, that the top 40 just seemed to be getting swamped by Stock Aitken and Waterman. I couldn't remember what music was like before Stock Aitken and Waterman. They were just everywhere, weren't they?
They really were, and they dominated the album charts as well. They just, the airwaves, just couldn't move for it. I mean, it was fairly generic pop, wasn't it? But they obviously found a formula that worked. People lapped it up.
Absolutely.
But at the same time as Stock Aitken and Waterman, there was bubbling under an indie and alternative guitar scene that was building momentum. So the Smiths had just split in 1987. That influenced countless bands coming up. Acid House was beginning to filter into the UK clubs from Chicago and Ibiza. It was still quite niche in 1987, but quietly transformative. Obviously, then we get to see the beginnings of house music kind of bubbling under. So yeah, a kind of an interesting time for music, but on the surface, for mass consumption, it was primarily in the UK, Stock Aitken and Waterman.
Yeah, absolutely. And we loved our tapes. Tapes, it was all cassettes from 1987, Walkmans, mixtapes, doing my mixtape for your pals. Feel so proud when you did a mixtape, didn't you? It's like, this is me in cassette form. The Sony Discman, however, is a portable CD player. You can imagine such a thing. It's becoming widely available in 1987, but it's the Walkman and cassettes reign supreme. I just happened to be flicking through the Argos catalogue of 1987 yesterday, looking just to get a sense of what it was like. And there's one CD Walkman for sale. The rest is all cassettes, ghetto blasters, tape machines, Walkmans and stuff. So it's cassettes and go. Pressing play and record on the charts on a Sunday night.
I mean, it really was. I mean, the CD Walkman, whatever, Discman, was just so unreachable, wasn't it? I mean, it was expensive, and it would also mean, I mean, you couldn't tape things off the radio onto a CD, you know, which is what we're all about. What were we in 1987? Maybe 13, 14-ish? You know, music was everything. It was establishing your identity. And to buy a CD Walkman, or whatever you call it, was unobtainable because they were about 200 quid, weren't they? Even at that point. And then obviously you had to buy all the CDs to go with it. And that's it.
I remember having that conversation. Then what's the point? You can't tape over them, can you? You can't record on them. So it was years before I succumbed to the CD revolution, trust me. Tell us about fashion days.
Yeah, fashion were big in 1987. It's all about excess, confidence and sharp image. Power dressing reflected ambition and wealth. Shoulder pads, sharp suits and bold colours. Hairstyles were big, styled and expressive. Image matters a lot. Now, this is in line with the yuppie, greed is good kind of culture, isn't it? So everything was opulent, big, looked expensive, hair was big, grand statements, basically.
Yeah, this 1987 is the height of that kind of dynasty glamour. And this is also the height of hairspray. Remember how much hairspray women used to use back in 1987 to make these incredibly massive, huge hairstyles. But yeah, big. There's no such thing as subtlety in 1987. It's all big. And even for younger people, youth fashion is starting to mix designer sportswear, casual football stars, American influencers, American football influencers coming in 1987 for some reason. And as you just said, fashion is more and more about your identity and status, not just your taste. So
I watched a Top of the Pops from 1989. So obviously it had Kylie and Jason on it, and all that kind of thing. And the fashions there were, as you've just said, you know, for the youth and the people who weren't the kind of dynasty power dressers earning big bucks in the city and stuff. So for the kind of like the youth culture, it's all about the jeans, kind of light color, light bluish jeans, not the dark stuff. And it was all about trainers. I remember this time coveting Nike Air trainers. I think they might have come in a couple of years later, but it was that all kind of came in from the hip hop and rap from across the pond, didn't it? So yeah, like you say, there was a lot of American influence coming into the UK at that point.
Yeah, and kids talking about having designer labels. You know, this is a new phenomenon. You know, this hasn't really happened before. So yeah, and as you touched on earlier, yuppie culture. But yuppie culture, as well as the fashion, it's the ethos. Greed is good, as you said. So suddenly things like credit, home ownership, material success are increasingly normalized as goals and aspirational things, you know. So it's that whole kind of 80s material culture about acquiring wealth through any method and all this stuff is kind of the cultural zeitgeist, isn't it?
Championed by Thatcher and the Conservatives. That was their ethos as well, wasn't it, at this point?
Yeah.
Gordon Gekko and all that was floating around at this point.
Absolutely. So Dirty Dancing, one of the biggest films of the year. Should we see what else was making waves in the cinema this year, Dave?
Yeah. Now, if ever there was a lesson in random hookup culture, Fatal Attraction was it. wasn't it? Fatal Attraction, it's a hugely influential psychological thriller. It shaped the late 80s and 90s portrayals of relationships and gender anxiety and sparked a widespread cultural debate and copycat films. So essentially, Michael Douglas has a one-night stand with Glenn Close. He's married with kids and everything. Glenn Close turns out to be, as the phrase was coined, a literal bunny boiler. So yeah, that was huge in 1987.
Yeah. And it speaks very specifically about the treatment of female madness in cinema and what a woman is capable of doing. We definitely need to look at Fatal Attraction because it's a great film for us to get our teeth into. Another very influential film, particularly in sci-fi cinema and pop culture, is RoboCop, a film which mixes action with satire with capitalism, media and policing. I like a bit of Robo, can't lie. I think it's quite a clever film.
I do too, because obviously it was kind of kicking against everything we've just talked about the wealth-dominated capitalist culture.
Indeed.
Now, one film I haven't seen, I have to confess, directed by Stanley Kubrick, Full Metal Jacket becomes one of the most influential war films ever made, known for its stark depiction of military training and dehumanization. It continues to shape how war is portrayed on film and TV. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't seen the full thing. It's not really my bag, but I did watch when I was researching my PhD, specifically looking at the sections on army training and what it does and how it processes. I did watch a lot of this. It's an American experience. It's very different from a British experience, but I can see why it was so influential and so kind of groundbreaking, I guess. But I've also not seen The Last Emperor, which is the other big one this year. That won 9 Academy Awards. I was 14. I'm sure it's an incredible movie. Got Best Picture, epic history, epic storytelling, visual style amazing. One day it'll be on the list.
But not today.
Not today.
So those were films across the pond that were making waves, and 2 British films were making waves this year. So the first one was Hellraiser, directed by Clive Barker, and it's a major moment for British horror. The film introduced darker, more adult horror themes and influenced horror aesthetics well into the 1990s. I just remember Pinhead from Hellraiser.
Yes. Hellraisers aren't my favourite sequence of horror films. I love a horror film. They're not my favourite, but I do think the first one is really clever. And With Nail and I is also released this year because one of the most influential British cult films, defines a certain style of British black comedy. What's your thoughts on With Nail and I?
I love it. I think it's great. I think Richard E. Grant is fantastic in it. Richard Griffiths as the randy old perv is very good as well. It was different, wasn't it? I spent most of my student years a bit like With Nail and I, just trying to blag and get drunk and all that kind of thing.
I didn't see it till some years later, but if we think about the wider context where this Dirty Dancing is situated, as we've talked about them already before, but Reagan and Thatcher vanguarding a new particular moral conservatism. So the fact that this film comes out and quite unashamedly deals with female sexuality is quite a, controversial landscape in which it's emerging in.
Yeah, and also...
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say the AIDS crisis is kind of emerging, isn't it? It's kind of the start of the big scare 1987. We talk about the adverts in the UK that scared the producers out of everybody. So it was really starting to take hold of the cultural conversation. It's reshaping attitudes towards sex and the body. And I suppose Dirty Dancing, made in 1986, kind of brought this sexualized style of dancing and also sex into the cultural conversation as well, especially as it was primarily aimed at the teenage market, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's also, around this time, there's a growing sense of a culture of empowerment. So certain groups are being increasingly empowered, usually white. But at the same time, we talk about the moral conservatism kind of retrenches what liberations people are feeling. At the same time, it's still very moral constraint within wider society that kind of pushes back against anybody getting any piece of the pie that isn't the usual recipients of the pie, for a better word.
So also, at this point, the Cold War, the second Cold War, is still raging on at this point. We've obviously got Thatcher and Reagan on the one side, and then Gorbachev came in around about this time. But there was still a very uneasy feeling about the present day. And I think what Dirty Dancing does is it's set in 1963, isn't it? So we saw quite a few of these films that kind of harked back to a, inverted commas, safer time, nostalgic time where, the conservative values stood for something and deemed as safe, really, weren't they? Although in this film challenged by by a more modern thought and feeling.
Yes, it's true. We talked about before how in times of stress, people look back to nostalgia as a kind of comforting myth. And you're right, this film, because it's set in 1963, but made in 1987, it can talk about abortion, it can talk about sexual liberation, it can discuss class transgression in a comfortable kind of space without actually having to do anything about them in the wider world. Yes, it's a very complicated film, I think, Dirty Dancing. It's got a lot of elements in it, which sometimes work against each other, and sometimes highlight problematic elements of it, but at other times don't, if you see what I mean. It's complicated. It's complicated.
It's complicated. Well, we should get into it. Before we do that, though, just to widen our cultural knowledge of 1987, shall we have a look what was in the official charts on the week that Dirty Dancing was released?
This is the top 10. This is the top 10 from the 11th of October, 1987. Do you want to take us off, Dave?
Top 10. So let's see how many we know. So speaking about Stock Aitken and Waterman, number 10, Never Gonna Give You Up, Rick Astley.
Number 9 is Steve Walsh, I Found Loving. I think we know that one, don't we?
I'm not sure. I do know this one. Number 8, I Need Love, LL Cool J. We talk about the American rappers making the leap across the pond, and obviously very popular. Number 8 at this point.
Yes. Now, at number 7, just to repeat myself, I Found Loving, 1987 by the Fatback Band. So presumably that's the one I know.
I mean, are they both the same song? Number 7, I Found Loving, 1987 by the Fatback Band, and number 9, I Found Loving, Steve Walsh.
Presumably. That's really random. Anyway.
Well, we might investigate that. Number 6, Needs No Introduction, Bad by Michael Jackson.
Indeed. Number 5, Crazy Nights by Kiss. I just love a bit Crazy Night.
Talking about big hair and hairspray.
Really, very much so.
Number 4 is Crockett's Theme by, is it Jan Hammer or Jan Hammer?
I think it's Jan. Jan Hammer sounds like she should be singing in the cocktail lounge.
Or on Howard's Way.
Yeah, Jan Hammer.
Obviously the theme tune to Miami Vice there.
Indeed. That's a big telly hit at the time. At number 3, we talked about House Come In, Pump Up the Volume by Mars. I mean, that was a huge song. That's, again, I didn't really understand it when I first heard it, probably because I was too much listening to Kylie and Jason Bananarama. But here we are. This is the kind of acid and House Coming In, isn't it? Here it comes.
Yeah, the pianos.
Slowly. Yeah.
Yeah, God, absolutely. So, number 2, Full Metal Jacket, brackets, Sorry. I Want to Be Your Drill Instructor, Abigail Mead and Nigel Goulding. Tell us about that, because I don't know too much about that.
I have absolutely no idea. I presume it's from the film. It must be, honestly. Number 1 is a good song, You Win Again, the Bee Gees. Classic song.
Is it a good song?
Yes, I love that song. Why do you not?
It's a bit middle of the road for me for Bee Gees. Obviously, the Saturday Night Fever and all that shit. Going from that to You Win Again.
You think you know someone, don't you? And then the rug is pulled from under your feet. Brutal. Absolutely fucking brutal.
Shall we move on?
Let's move on. Oh, yes, it's very easy for you to move on, isn't it? So, should we have a look at this? We are the problematic gays. We like to look at problematic elements, of which there are few in this film. Should we get into it?
Let's do it.
Now, I got to thinking, Dave, that some of these elements are actually, in a film from 1987, genuinely progressive aspects of this film, which work really well. Let's look at Penny. Penny's knocked up. She's pregnant. And has a horrible experience. The guy who she's pregnant by, Robbie, is a right piece of shit. He slut shames her. He basically says of her, some people count, some people don't. She has to have a horrible abortion. It's in a fairly gruesome scene, isn't it? Did you investigate a bit about what the state of pregnancy was in this time of Dirty Dancing when it was set?
Yeah, because obviously, it's set in 1963. And it's easy for us to talk in this day and age about the processes a woman goes through to get an abortion. There is access there to it in the UK, not necessarily in all the states of the USA now. And the USA has always had this conflict going on, hasn't it, in between the religious right and the liberal left, and also with in between states. So I just wanted to know what it was like in 1963. So, was abortion illegal for Penny? Is Penny putting herself in an illegal situation by having this? Essentially, it's a backstreet botched abortion, isn't it? So, in 1963, almost all states banned abortion. So most states allowed it only if necessary to save the life of the pregnant woman. A few states had very narrow therapeutic exceptions, but elective abortion, if you decide to have an abortion simply because you don't want the baby, that was illegal everywhere. And because of this, many women sought illegal and often unsafe abortions, which is exactly what happens to Penny. Later on, from 1967 to 1970, a small number of states, starting with Colorado, began liberalizing abortion laws. And then 1973, I think we might have all heard of this, but don't necessarily know what it's about. Roe versus Wade legalized abortion nationwide. So in the context of Dirty Dancing, Penny's abortion would have been illegal and dangerous, and the film is historically accurate in that regard.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's a brutal process she goes through, but the script just kind of dumps her as soon as she's useful, isn't she? Her abortion storyline is there basically to make baby look like baby's compassionate, baby's empathetic, baby can get stuff organized, baby's rich, basically. She can get the cash in order to pay for the procedure that Penny has to go under. And then as soon as Penny's usefulness to the plot is done, she's done. So it just feels a bit like abortion as spectacle, I guess, just as a convenient plot device to further baby. What did you think about that?
It's a plot device to bring Johnny, Patrick Swayze, and baby Jennifer Grey together, place them in a position where they have to work alongside each other. Now, we talk about snobbery in this film and class, etc. Johnny is very snobby towards baby to start with, sees her as privileged, as essentially a baby, and she represents to him everything that he dislikes about, not only about the middle classes, conservative classes, but also it kind of provides a mirror to Johnny that he's not like that. He's not worthy. He feels himself useless. He's just there as basically a sex object to service the bored conservative housewives whose husbands are off having their own affairs, etc. So yeah, baby holds a very stark mirror up for Johnny, which Penny's abortion forces them to be together and to learn to like each other, I suppose. It's like you say, it's a device.
And she's got the power because she's allowed into his world, despite their kind of reservation start. But Johnny's never allowed into baby's world. At the end, his father says, yeah, you're okay. But I don't get the sense that they're going to invite Johnny into their house, And I think one of my problems with this film was that it gives that myth that love can solve this class inequality, that it can be made good. I think the class element of this film is interesting, but it doesn't really do anything about meaningfully try to address it. It just feels all a bit kind of superficial.
I wonder if you do a film set in the past, then you're kind of rigidly set to the confines of history and how it was, because I would imagine there was this class divide, this class distinction, and never the twain shall meet. It wasn't not like as in the early 60s there was this fusion of the working class and the middle class. There was always this kind of rebellion, wasn't there, against establishment and authority and wealth and power. Exactly, it's represented in this movie with the Dirty Dancing culture. And yeah, it's really interesting. I found there was a lot of themes about this film. On the surface, it's a love story, isn't it? Well, it's kind of a coming of age. Now, baby, let's talk about baby, because she enters into this film as a child, I feel, idealistic, wants to go into the Peace Corps. She feels as though she's more intellectual than her sister, who's very superficial, is just into clothes and kissing boys, but where she wants to change the world, basically. And visually, she's dressed kind of conservatively. She's dressed quite babyish, I suppose. And this film is about her transformation into, or her journey into womanhood, isn't it? And by the end of the film, she's a completely different person. She's enlightened. Yeah. She's, I suppose, more educated in the ways of the world, etc. She loses her virginity to this Johnny. So she becomes a woman. So that's essentially the main story, isn't it? But underplayed by all of that, there's a really interesting social commentary to this film about conservatism, about white privilege, about class. And I think with Patrick Swayze, I mean, the Johnny character, it felt very much kind of like Rebel Without a Cause. You know, we get these anti-heroes, don't we, in the films, that are the young, the sex, the live ones. We have the Marlon Brandos, we have the John Travoltas, Saturday Night Fever. He kind of fills a really kind of traditional role in this movie, doesn't he?
Yes, absolutely. And you're right. She's a very privileged background. And one of my other problems with this movie was the fact that Johnny's and the precariousness of his living, you know, the fact he could be out of work, but he lives from job to job, is kind of romanticized as part of that bad boy image, you know, no steady job. You know, it just feels a bit redundant and just feels a little bit run of the mill, I guess, you know, and the film kind of almost fetishizes the dodgy in air quotes aspect of, you know, of Johnny's living compared to her.
Yeah.
And, you know, just this activism that this journey she goes on, fair enough, you know, she does have that wonderful speech with her dad where she quite rightly pulls her dad up on the hypocrisy of his beliefs and stuff. So she does go on this story, but at the same time, at the end of this film, nothing has really changed. The patriarchy, which is very evident throughout this film, you know, at one point, Kellerman is it, the guy who owns the resort. He basically tells the male staff, basically, your job here is to try and seduce women, even the dog.
Yes.
We see her dad having the power of that, being a white guy, being a doctor, being rich, you know, the power that bestows him on characters. And so she has this speech, but at the same time, at the end, I don't get the sense that anything about this has changed. It's been her journey, fair enough, but for all the talk of breaking down class barriers, for all the talk of, you know, inclusivity and stuff, the situation is unchanged from the beginning of the movie, I thought.
There was quite an interesting speech by the boss, Kellerman, at the end. He laments the end of this era of people coming to camp and putting on traditional shows and the ending of the old guard, basically, and the emergence of this kind of youth culture, this youth explosion things, and then kind of comes to embrace it. He sees that as the future. So there is a little bit of sense of actually there is a bit of hope for this emerging youth culture and stuff. But I do take your point that actually, even though, you know, the dad accepts baby's transition from child to womanhood and the dad accepts Johnny, that he perhaps got him wrong, etc., it still doesn't mean that Johnny's going to be perceived any differently in the outside world.
Absolutely.
So you're right.
Absolutely.
Traditions still carry on. And class divides still carry on, don't they?
Absolutely. And one thing that I thought was actually really interesting watching this film is the fetishization of Patrick Swayze's body in this film was something I hadn't quite clocked. Well, actually, my nana had definitely clocked it because it definitely works for her. But we are encouraged as viewers to revel in scenes of Swayze's body. Not being funny, Dave, but it's fucking really hot. So hello. But at the same time, her body is problematized. So, you know, she's not a good enough dancer. There's lots of scenes of her moving her body around in awkward positions and stuff, whereas his is just this beautiful thing, which is interesting because, as you say, it was directed by a gay guy, so it was too much of a surprise. But actually, Jennifer Grey's body was equally beautiful, but it just didn't have that fetishistic lens that Swayze's did, which I thought was super interesting.
So this was obviously intentional by the producer, by the director, by the writer, to go down this road with Patrick Swayze and present him as the fetishized person in this movie. That, you know, it's about a movie about the female gaze on the male body, which is, it's not unique because we've got things like at the same time Officer and a Gentleman. You know, we've had Saturday Night Fever with John Travolta. So it's not new, but I just feel as though it's really accentuated in this movie, especially in a movie aimed at teenagers. You know, it's so interesting that they've done this with Patrick Swayze. And like you say, you know, baby's body is on display, but it's not shot in the same way. It's not Patrick Swayze as baby all slathered all over him because he's supposed to be sweating, obviously. But it is the floor element of Patrick Swayze that does it. And I just wonder how much of that was proposed during all the meetings before they'd cast Patrick Swayze, that this is going to be a film about the female gaze on the male body, or when they found Patrick Swayze, he was a relative unknown at the time, saw him and his body and thought, okay, we've struck gold here. This is the way we're going to shoot him. This is the way we're going to light him.
It does tie in as well with increasing visibility of male bodies in film and TV, which happens after Nick Kamen takes his 501s off it, and that famous Levi advert And from that point on, the Sun has just introduced its page 7 fella. So male bodies are being invited to be looked at in the same way that female bodies have always been looked at, which is very much a new development for this period in the 80s. And obviously riffs on that, we've got things like the Chippendales becoming a big thing in the UK, So again, that kind of a safe space for women to basically ogle men with their kit off. And I was very unhappy with it in this film, David. I have to say, I felt disgusted. I felt soiled.
You soiled something, let me tell you.
This film also, if I may just bring up one other problem for me, it really plays into that whole thing that all a man needs is the right woman to believe in him to come true with himself, which I just thought,
One of my issues with the film, and it's not a criticism of the film in general, it's a criticism of the story point, because actually I did really enjoy watching this film. I thought it was super interesting and thought, well, we'll get on to the dancing in a bit. But the whole premise of, okay, so Penny's got to have an abortion, so she can't do this dance that they have to do with Patrick Swayze, with Johnny. If they don't do the dance, then they're going to lose their jobs and they'll lose next season and everything. So it's basically a horrible premise for them. So Baby volunteers to do it and they say, oh, she can't do it. She can't dance, but let's pick her to do it. And in the previous scenes, we've seen like 1,000,001 women who are dirty dancing, who are absolutely phenomenally brilliant. But all of a sudden, there's no one else to choose apart from the person who can't put one foot in front of the other.
You're absolutely right. I mean, for God's sake, it's almost like, let's put on a show, isn't it? He can't dance. He's surrounded by women who clearly can dance. But do you know what? We're going to choose you, love. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit silly, but it's that kind of movie, isn't it? It might sound like I'm gripey. I really enjoyed watching it. And as I said, I'm not sure because I was ill. There were moments I really, really bought into their relationship. Totally did. I really kind of spoke to me of that vibe you get when you meet somebody you really like for the first time. I absolutely bought it. Stopped at the bits I'm supposed to sob at, the bits I'm supposed to punch the air at. But clearly, there are still problematic elements. And we talked before about nostalgia and when you watch something which has a nostalgic feeling for you. And this just brought back all of those memories of my grand, sitting there watching it. And towards the end, when obviously he comes in, says nobody puts baby in the corner. That was it. I was a hot, sobbing, ugly, crying mess. Partly because of the movie it made me, but also just all those wonderful memories of me. Nana came back at the same time. So it really affected my viewing experience of this film, I have to say, in a good way, I think.
Yeah, I watched this film and I thought, okay, I can sit here and be really cynical about this and start picking apart the plot holes, start picking apart the authenticity. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm just going to sit here and enjoy this because it draws you in right from the beginning. And the first Dirty Dancing scene that we see is about 5 minutes into this movie. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to sit here and let this film sweep me over. It was great. Like you say, we have highlighted some problematic elements of it. One problematic element of it that I found is I do call into question Patrick Swayze's. I know people are going to shoot me down here. Patrick Swayze's acting ability did seem at some points that it was a little bit acting by numbers. But that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say anything else because he obviously has this dominating screen presence.
I totally get that. But I think he absolutely did what he needed to do for this role, I think.
Yeah,
I can completely agree with you. But the world wasn't asking for Hamlet. It was asking just to get your tits out, log Jennifer Grey, make us feel like we're watching at home, getting snogged by you. That is your job in this film.
Tick. Okay, I think we should lighten the mood a little bit. And I think we should talk about what this film is primarily about, which is the dancing and the music.
You're absolutely right. Dancing is fantastic in this. It's amazing, isn't it? The first dance Patrick Swayze does, I was just like, wow, incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yes. Okay, so my question was about the dancing in Dirty Dancing, which is phenomenal. The choreography is absolutely stunning. But my question was the Dirty Dancing style that we see in this movie really popular in 1963? And the short answer is no, it wasn't. So here's the context. So the film's set in the summer of 1963, but the dancings Johnny and Penny and all perform is based on styles that had already existed for years, especially the Latin dances, the mambo, the cha-cha, the rumba, swing, rhythm and blues. But what felt new and shocking in this movie at the time was the sensuality that they incorporated into it, the close body contact, the way the dances cross class and cultural boundaries. That's why it kind of seemed ahead of its time. So the choreography in the movie does blend authentic early 60s social dance, but with modern dance elements from the 70s and the 80s, which is, obviously the 80s, that's the film was made. So it's a kind of a fusion, this Dirty Dancing style, of the old and the new. I also want to talk about Kenny Ortega, who's the choreographer, because he's quite an interesting guy. So he was born in 1950, and he's best known for his work on the Disney Channel, most notably High School Musical, but also he's choreographed multiple iconic 80s films such as, get this, Xanadu, St. Elmo's Fire, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Dirty Dancing. And he's also worked on multiple music videos and produced concert tours for the likes of Kiss, Olivia Newton-John, Cher, Madonna, Miley Cyrus and Michael Jackson. Most notably, he was choreographing the cancelled This Is It concert tour. Do you remember when Michael Jackson died just before he was about to go on tour? So, I mean, he's really highly regarded, Kenny Ortega, and he was honoured with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and a Disney Legend Award in 2019. I mean, he's just amazing, and the choreography in this movie is second to none, really.
It never struck me as being historically accurate, though. Because, I mean, some of the songs from 1987, the soundtrack, the end routine, the famous one where he does the lift, their friends come back, the other Dirty Dancers are standing at the back, and they all look like they've just come from 1987. It's like they've given up on any kind of effort to make them look 1963. It's like, you still keep your hair in that lords, they're straight off the set. And so the anachronism, that kind of clashing of time periods, I guess, that's never really bothered me, because it clearly they weren't doing the trad 1963 dances. But it's incredible.
I also want to talk about the soundtrack, because obviously that lends a huge part to this film, and it was a really big success. So I've had the time of my life, Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes, the massive denouement, which I want to talk a little bit more about in a bit. But She's Like the Wind, Patrick Swayze, Hungry Eyes, Yes, by Mary Clayton. There's just so many songs on this that, because of this film, have entered into the public psyche and the public culture. Even now, you hear these songs on the radio, don't you?
And how many times have you seen some people drunk in a pub when I've had the time of my life comes on, try and do that lift? And you spot the moment exactly 1 second in when they realise that it's much fucking harder than it looks. You've got to be much stronger than you look to do it. And you've got to have some sense of balance and not be three sheets to the wind. We've all tried it, haven't we? But the soundtrack is one of the big reasons this song was a huge success. The songs are fantastic. When I've had the time of my life, it's just brilliant song. So just circling back to the kind of problematic elements we talked about, I'd like to just push back against those a little bit, because I did like this film, and actually I thought there was a lot a lot to value in it. So we've talked about Penny's abortion. For a film in Reagan's America to actually have an abortion plotline is something which is to be commended when Reagan's evangelical style of politics is becoming the norm in America. Working class people are allowed to have true relationships and to be sexy and to be sexually free and liberated, when in comparison to the middle and upper classes, which they're not made grotesque as they often are in these kind of films. I love the fact you touched on this when you talk about the dancing, the dancing, it's filmed in such a great way. Okay, you were looking at Swayze's body, but at the same time, you get the sense of the tenderness and the growing kind of feelings between them, and just the tiniest of close-ups. And the way there's one sequence where I have to say the sofa was absolutely soaking. When he's just gently moving his hands, he's behind her and he's just moving. Oh my God, it was like my TV had melted, David. And I remember my nana saying at that point specifically, "He can melt my butter, I tell you." And I just think it's great to be able to look at a woman who's discovering her sexuality, who's actually not being punished in the script for it.
No.
It's great. I think it's really cool. I think if anything, we have a film that pretends it's being rebellious, when actually it doesn't be rebellious at all, but actually it's a really good coming of age story.
Yeah.
And I was happy with that.
Yeah. Well, I had a couple of little gripes, but I mean, that they don't overshadow by any stretch my enjoyment of this film. And I just want to talk very briefly about the final scene, because even watching it now, it brings goosebumps. That final
It's ridiculous.
dance.
It's top line ridiculous, but it's just fucking fantastic.
It's so fun. And I would defy anybody to not enjoy that film. Even the most cynical heart must watch that and just think, oh, well, that was quite nice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And, I mean, when you're filming something like that, you cannot think this is going to be iconic, because you can't even think about how am I going to cut all this movie together, and then how am I going to get this movie distributed, and is anyone going to come and watch it? So you're not thinking this is going to enter into the classic dance musical moments of all time. You just can't have it. It's that magic. It's that cinema that captures the zeitgeist, rides the wave, and, you know, sustains throughout the years and everything. So what I thought might be quite fun before we move on is just to look at the top 10 dance movie sequences by that extremely reliable source, Mr. ChatGPT. I just thought I'd throw it in and see what happened. So this is what are the top 10 movie dances of all time? Okay, so number 10 is Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone dancing in the planetarium in La La Land. Very sweet. Number 9. Do you want to do number 9? Have you got it there?
Oh, yeah, I have got it here. Jennifer Beals' interpretive jazz dance in Flashdance. Not to be topped by Jerry Halliwell, obviously. Joking. Yeah, absolutely iconic. Check.
Aye.
Iconic.
She tried the best, did Jerry, didn't she?
She did. She's no Jennifer Beals.
No. Number 8, Natalie Wood's tap and jazz dances in West Side Story. I mean, they're pretty iconic.
They are, but I mean, you don't get much more iconic than Fred and Ginger doing Top Hat. You know, their ballroom is just, their foxtrot is exquisite to this day.
Yes,
it's just astonishing.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, number 6 is Michael Jackson's Moonwalk in Moonwalker the movie and his live performances. Now, we always tend to gloss over Michael Jackson on this podcast, don't we? But I mean, that is pretty iconic. It's up there.
Yeah, but he did nick it off somebody else. The moonwalk wasn't his. Number 5, Julie Andrews twirling on the hilltop in The Sound of Music. Not so much an iconic dance as an iconic moment, I think, really, that one.
Yeah, I would say. This one's class. Number 4, Uma Thurman and John Travolta's twist in Pulp Fiction. Again, classic. Instantly iconic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Number 3 is Patrick and Jennifer, the finalist in Dirty Dancing. Fair enough.
Aye. Number 2, John Travolta's disco moves in Saturday Night Fever.
Yes. Disco floor with the lights on it. Them tight black trousers he's wearing, or that white suit later on. Hello. Number 1 is Gene Kelly singing in the rain, dancing in the rain. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. But that was quite fun.
Yes, it was. Now, we obviously all heard that the cautionary tale of Jennifer Grey's nose.
Well, she lost her identity when she had a little nose embellishment, didn't we? I mean, we don't like to belittle people, especially women, for having procedures done. But I mean, it is a very strange one, isn't it? Because it kind of defined her, didn't it? And then she became instantly unrecognizable, which for an actor, I would say, is pretty. What's the word?
Pretty key.
Yeah, pretty key.
Yes, for those of you who don't know, Jennifer Grey, the lead in Dirty Dancing, didn't like her nose, had a nose job, looked totally different, never got work again. Lost the one thing that made her unique. So there's a cautionary tale for us there, I think, for everybody, is there not?
There is. I mean, don't get any work done, Dr. Lee, because our gazers recognise you instantly for your face.
I know.
When we make our first million, don't be spending it on cosmetic procedures. I mean, I don't mind a little face peel or a little eye bag erasing.
Yes,
but don't drastically alter your appearance, please.
No promises, darling. No promises. Whatever you need to do for showbiz, that's all I'm saying. Thank you. So, all that being said for Dirty Dancing, what would you give it out of 10, Dave?
I would give it 8 watermelons out of 10. I mean, I've really, really thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's not up there in my top 10 of classics of all time, but I found it quite inoffensive, and I found a lot of things to talk about. The social commentary I thought was really interesting. The way it portrayed men and women's bodies was really interesting. And I thought, in all, apart from the glaring plot hole about hiring a complete novice dancer to star in a professional gig when there's 1,000,001 other people who could have done it, that is what just tainted it for me a little bit. But overall, what a heartwarming, nice romantic movie, I thought.
Yes.
What about you?
Yes, I too will give it 8 Patrick Swayze boobies out of 10. Enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I'm blaming the cold. Normal service will be resumed next week, everybody, when my old cynical self will be back to normal. But I really enjoyed it. Thought it was great. Surprisingly subversive, but not really, but enough subversive elements to keep me interested. So yes, 8 out of 10 for me too. Very good.
Fantastic. So with all that being
Yeah.
said then, Dr. Lee Arnott, social historian and award-winning podcaster, what are we going to be talking about next week?
Well, you could say we're going from the sublime to the ridiculous, but next Friday night, everybody, get your glad rags on because we're going to go out. We're going to get absolutely pissed. We're going to go to 1993, get drunk, and we're going to come back. We're going to have a kebab, everybody, and we're going to watch The Word. Oh, yes.
The Word. Yes, late night magazine show, anarchic, irreverent. Some might say crap, but others might say genius. We'll find out next week.
Very much of its time, I suspect. So, yeah, quite looking forward to that.
Do you think Terry Christian might be a gazer?
Could you imagine? If you are, Terry, come on the show. Come join us because it's going to be fun. Right, Dave, I'm off to practice intensively for 2 days for a dance piece I've never done before in my life in front of a live audience. What are you going to do?
I'm going to put on a nice little smoozy record and just start gently rocking backwards and forwards and just do a little dirty mambo. That sounded a bit sexual. I wonder what dirty mambo is.
I think that's what we do at a party. With the dirty mambo in the corner.
Oh, I've just done a dirty mambo all over the floor. Anyway, before we go, before we lose Lee completely, before Lee needs to head off to meet his dirty mambo, are you all right there, darling? Come on.
Yes, I told you not to make me laugh.
You've got to rein it in. Keep it professional. I'm surprised you made it on air today, but you know, you are a true pro. The show must go on. Anyway, before I was kept rudely interrupted, I was going to say, please follow us on our socials at Podcast Gaze on Instagram and TikTok. If you want to email us with any thoughts, comments, or suggestions on future shows, then please do at theproblematicgaze@gmail.com. Please hit that follow button because they really do spread the word of Problematic Gaze, and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got videos going up on Spotify as well for some of our episodes. You can find us on YouTube as well. So I think we better let you go and die and slowly wither away in a corner, darling.
Thank you. So until next week, Dave, it's been a pleasure as always. Au reservoir.
Au reservoir.